whatever, white, black, or other.
Right.
And I think that return to other is not acceptable.
Right.
But so what do you think? Do you think this is kind of the tip of the iceberg, and that we're being questioned about how minority we are, or I guess to use another, I think Frank Wu has talked about us as honorary whites.
Right. I mean, certainly it's an ongoing issue, and I think you're right in terms of when you talk to Asian Americans who have lived in different states and different time periods of the United States. Right. Are you white? Are you black? Are you colored? Are you other? What are you? And how should we pigeonhole you? And let's just come up with some sort of ad hoc way of dealing with Asian Americans. Clearly not acceptable. We are a clearly multicultural country as well as a multicultural state, which is very diverse with all sorts of people from many different countries. And in terms of how Asian Americans should be categorized, we definitely need to continue to push back and ensure that the model minority myth is not the only conversation, the only messaging that's occurring out there right now. They will, again, folks who want to misappropriate Asian Americans, and that's sort of how I perceive it, will continually point to us as honorary whites. They will point to us as overachieving minority folks, and they will point to us as, we're model minorities. We don't need any sort of help or assistance. Do not categorize Asian Americans as being a minority, because there's no need for any of that. And again, if you try and deconstruct and unpackage Asian America, either here in Chicago, let alone in the country, we do see that in terms of poverty rates, that there are significant groups here in Chicago, including Hmong, Cambodian, Vietnamese American, as well as Korean Americans, who apparently have the highest rate of poverty in the city of Chicago. So again, when we look at indicators of wellness, we can just look straight to, okay, let's not just clump everyone together, including more recent immigrants who have come in on H-1B visas. Let's look at all Asian Americans who live here in the United States, who live here in Chicago. What are the rates of literacy? What are the rates of dropping out of high school, pregnancy rates in high school? And even when we go to those different immigrants who might have, say, advanced degrees, what are they doing now? Why are so many South Asian, Indian Americans in particular, owners of Subway franchises or 7-Elevens or gas stations? Is that what they choose to do, or is that rather how they approach surviving and doing well in the United States, given various barriers of entry into business and just outright discrimination, especially post 9/11? So again, we have many folks on the more conservative view of the world and the viewpoint of Chicago who will argue, look at Asian Americans here in Chicago, they're all doing fine, they all have multiple degrees. As we clump them all together, they do a little bit better than whites in terms of poverty, education, what have you. But indeed, when you start pulling out the different groups and looking at the actual demographics of each group and what's going on, you can even go to different groups who supposedly are doing well here in Chicago, and you start looking at what's going on. It's like, well, that's very strange. Why are there high rates of entrepreneurship among so many different ethnic Asian American groups here in Chicago? Is it by choice? Clearly it's not. I mean, I can answer the question. The answer is they are facing either glass ceiling discrimination or outright anti-Asian discrimination, and therefore they choose to become small business owners. And that, again, is a very high-risk enterprise, and not a high-risk enterprise that will have high return easily, unlike folks who choose to enter other sorts of entrepreneurial enterprises. On empowerment issues is, again, even though we're entering our 15th anniversary here at Asian American Institute, I view sort of where we're at right now, sort of where many of the other groups are in the country, say, about 25 years ago. So there were small little Asian American groups in San Francisco and Los Angeles and New York who, who had brought in their first attorney, and through that paradigm, somehow, as they started doing more litigation and winning cases, were able to grow significantly. And it was a long process. And again, some of these groups still have budgets of under $1 million, but they do have a staff of over 10, and they're quite sustainable, and they do good work. And that's been some of the models that I've seen out there. Again, 25 years ago, they brought in their very first attorney, very small shop, very similar to where we're at now, but then over 25 years, as they continued to grow their presence, they became more sustainable. So again, that links up to another idea or another way of looking at it in terms of any cynicism from anyone who wonders, AI, you're so small, what can you do? And again, at least from my perspective, I can help bring a legal perspective as well as a policy perspective, number crunching perspective that will hopefully educate folks as we do more lawsuits, impact litigation, or even just general advocacy that sort of changes the way people perceive and talk about us. I have no doubt that various large law firms will start supporting us, because historically although we've had many board members who are partners at large law firms, the amount of support could be only so much, given we didn't do any legal work, we didn't do any sort of legal advocacy, we didn't go in the courtroom, we didn't file complaints, so to speak. Now that we are, over the next few years, as we continue to do that sort of approach to advocacy, which is a little bit different, I have no doubt the support from the large law firms will increase. And hopefully, as we take on any sort of really serious litigation involving systemic issues impacting Asian Americans, we will have, one large law firm just throw all its resources behind us, and that again will grow what we can do. So that's just a part of the answer. Again, there are many ways of looking at the world, but at least just being very narrow and talking about the law and legal issues, that's one way where, not today perhaps, but I certainly believe within the next few years, we will grow. We will be noticed by the various players who are out there, and we will be able to impact these different issues a little bit. Not a lot. We can't change the world overnight, but we can at least highlight and ensure that people are aware of what the issues are and do more of a fact-based approach to moving forward.
So then would you say that the Institute is emphasizing more of making an impact on policy and talking to kind of those in charge or those at the table right now, rather than the man on the street who may have a pressing, I don't know, maybe they think they've been discriminated against at the workplace or something?
Sure. I mean, again, we want to hear about issues that impact individuals, because if there's enough of a pattern, all of a sudden we need to get involved. We are not a legal services agency. We are not able to handle even, like, say, 5 cases that come down the pike of wrongful termination, that we just don't have the capacity. We have, myself as the one sole attorney working there. So again, similar to the American Civil Liberties Union or any of the other, or MALDEF, Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund, we need to look for those key issues and see how we can impact it. And again, similar to all the other advocacy groups out there that have attorneys on board, look at, demand letters, meeting with policymakers, and then worst case scenario, represent 1 or 2 individuals to make change happen at a institutional, regional, or even statewide, or even national level if we do a federal lawsuit. And that's how we're going to approach it. But again, recognizing that litigation is the last weapon we would use. But again, if there is no traction, if there is no change, then we go ahead and build up the facts and we move forward.
So, I'm sorry, we again only have a few minutes left. So what do you see the Institute doing, let's say, a year from now? Or what is its, most pressing?
Sure. The most pressing issue that I clearly see at the moment, and having spoken to many of the stakeholders who reside in Asian America within Chicago, language access. It could be seniors, it could be hospitals, it's just everywhere, every place possible. We have many Asian Americans who have limited English proficiency, and so not clear yet what institution might need to reform most quickly. But again, language access is one of the huge barriers that we're facing, and hopefully AI will make some sort of impact within the upcoming year.
And I think that certainly makes sense, considering that, 80% of our community are immigrants, right?
Exactly.
So thank you so much, Myron, for coming back again, and I really hope we have a chance to talk soon.
Certainly.
Okay, Myron Quon, the Legal Director of the Asian American Institute, an organization that's enjoying its 15th year in Chicago. And I'm Yvonne Lau. Thanks for joining us on Conversations, and hope to see you next time.